Hi everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live. We would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are creating and streaming from today, and we'd also like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. My name is Flynn, I am hosting today, and I'm here with our special guest, James Barnard. Hey James, how you doing?
Hello, welcome back. Thank you very much for coming back for part two. Appreciate
Part
it.
two! Yeah,
Yeah,
we had a good
yeah.
time. Had a really good time on Tuesday, so if you missed out, we'll give you a little bit of a recap. If you want the whole thing, check out the replay on YouTube's usually the easiest. Like and subscribe, all that sort of stuff. We do weekly streams here. I never do that. Just I don't know. You can do
Follow,
it if you
like,
want.
subscribe.
Like and
Yeah.
subscribe. Yeah, jump on in. We do weekly streams. This is our second last stream of the year. Can't believe it. So we're very lucky and excited and having a great time hanging out with James. Talking about branding and spending a lot of time in Adobe Illustrator, which has been great. James, how has the rest of your week been before we jump in?
Pretty good, thanks. Pretty good. I've got to apologize. I picked up a bit of a cold from my kids. It's just one of those things where the colds just cycle around the house from kid to parent, parent to kid.
Yep.
So I apologize for my husky tones today. But hopefully you can bear with me and we'll get through this and finish up this design that we started on Tuesday.
I think you sound great. It's like a little
Thanks.
bit of extra baritone. That's all.
Thank
It's all
you.
good. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, cool. Well, let's jump into it. We went through a
Great.
lot on Tuesday, and maybe you can bring us up to speed on what you're working on.
Yeah, sure. So we were designing this slogan, "Bring me that horizon," which I stole from Jack Sparrow, Pirates of the Caribbean. One of those inspirational kind of short quotes that just means, let's crack on, let's get going. Usually said at like the start of a journey or the start of a project. And we're going with a nautical theme. So we took a sketch of a ship's wheel, worked it up in Illustrator, and we got this far in the design. So we've got our ship's wheel in place, and we just started to separate the ship's wheel from the section at the back, which we're going to pop in our sunrise and our birds flocking onto screen. So I'm just going to bring the sketch back over for reference.
Very cool. And this is a handmade sketch. I don't know if we covered this. Was this done by hand?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So
Very good.
obviously, now this is a refined sketch. Okay? Like I said before, I'm terrible at sketching, so I worked pretty hard on this for the live, and put this in a scanner, threw it in, and like I said on Tuesday, I tried to use Adobe Capture to bring this into Illustrator, but it's just a hot mess of vector, path points, and it's just unusable. So we worked from scratch on Tuesday. We brought this in just using the ellipse tools and centering them onto the artboard and using a bit of radial repeat to get the design of the spokes all the way around the wheel. And then we brought the nuts of the design on a layer on front. And now we've got the wheel done. Just the last thing we did on Tuesday was to add in the sort of the wave section of the design. So all I did was draw a semicircle over the top of the design to cover that top section. And I also brought the path points from the sort of horizontal stroke there to the front, so that we've got like the wave portion of that design that's separating the actual design from the back of what we're sort of looking at. So I'm just going to grab this path point again with our Command Y and bring that to the front. So the very last thing we did on Tuesday was to expand this path point there. So that's actually a stroke and a fill now, but it's in the right place. Now I just want to do one quick thing before we bring the sun back into the design, and it's just to chop off the bottom of the semicircle here that's kind of half covering the spoke there. So I'm just going to press Shift and E, and I'm just going to make sure that's a united shape. By the way, I got something in the mail on Wednesday. I've got a new toy, which I think I might be handy to show you. So on Tuesday, I showed you my keyboard, which had a load of hotkeys, macro keys on it. You'll notice that those labels have gone. Okay, I've taken the labels off my keyboard, my sticky, crappy labels, because I got this in the post. I don't know if you can see this. This is my new macro keyboard. Okay, I got this from this company in Canada called Work Louder. They just started making these, and I've been waiting for it for like 2 months, and it came yesterday. So I thought,
cool.
I'll set it all up. But I mapped even more macro keys to this keyboard. So we've got a rotate dial on here, which I'll show you in a minute. So all the unite functions, the Pathfinder functions. So we've got unite minus front, and then a couple of others on the right here. We've also got our center align button, which we were using on Tuesday. We've got a flip and copy, and I've got a couple of other ones as well, which I'll talk about in just a bit. But
oh, that's pretty cool. How good is a new toy?
I know. Gotta love a bit of tech, especially one that speeds up my workflow. All about speeding up my workflow in Illustrator. So the first thing I did there is just clicked the Unite button on that semicircle. So that has now turned that into a full shape because I chopped off the middle of it. Now when I press Shift and E, I can use that to sort of chop away the bit that's just appearing below the wave there, just so it's going to reveal the shape behind of our spoke.
So I don't see the eraser tool being used a lot in Illustrator. So this is really interesting.
It's probably because it's quite destructive, but we've got to a point in this design now where we know that our wave's in the right place, and all I'm doing is making sure that this dark semicircle is just covering that portion of the design. So now it's giving the impression that the sort of the design's chopped in half, and the wave, which is created by this expanded stroke that we built on Tuesday, I can move that up and down now to kind of create the sense of that wave. And if we need to, I'll shave a bit more off the bottom of this as well. But right now, that is separating the wave in half. We've got a dark section covering the design there. And I'm going to use this dark semicircle here. I'll just make that red so you can see it a little bit better. That section now, I'm going to use this as a clipping mask to hide the next portion of the design inside, so that we can work inside this portion so that it's not getting in the way of the background. It means we don't have to delete anything. So if I press Command Y and go to outline, our spokes are still behind the design. They're still there. So if we really wanted to, we could tweak them later on.
Cool.
Okay, right. So let's get our sun into the design. Now, ideally, I want that.
Sorry, just on the question, just a question that popped up on chat just before we jump into there, because you have the sketch on the side. The question was, since we've been using the sketch as a guide for this project, does that mean you always start with a sketch? Do you prefer it this way?
Nope. Like I said, I'm terrible. I am terrible with sketching. The reason this one is because it's very, very conceptual. I wanted to kind of get the sketch in the sort of as good a place as I could before I started this. But when I'm doing logos, I only really use sketching to rule out concepts or methods that don't work. So I'll just draw little line connections. And like I say, my sketching is absolutely terrible. I would show you one right now, but it's a brand new notebook and it's actually got current client work in there, so I can't show it because it's not
fair enough.
Maybe if I've got time, I can reach around and go and show you some of my sketches, because they are woeful, and it might make some of you feel a lot better about yourselves. All right, so we've got our dark section there, which we're going to use as the clipping mask. I want our sun to be bang in the middle of the design, so I'm just going to copy that central circle that we used for the center of the ship's wheel. I'm going to Apple F that over the top, bring that to the front with Shift Command right square bracket, Shift and X to invert that so it's white, and I'm going to take the stroke off it as well. Okay, now I'm just going to Shift and Option drag this up from the middle and just create the sun to roughly whereabouts I want it. Okay, so quick way to throw something into a clipping mask is to just select both options, and the one on the front is going to be the mask. So I'm going to copy this black section, Apple F that over the top, select both of those and press Command 7 to do a clipping mask. Okay, so that's the quick shortcut for the clipping mask. Now, one thing I'm going to do is bring the path here that we've got separating the design to the front with Shift Command right square bracket, and I'm also on our layers panel. I'm just going to move that up to a layer above. We'll just call this separation. Okay, and then you see the little. I'm sure most of you know this, but I didn't figure this out until a long way into my career. Anything selected on a layer has this little colored square section inside the layer, and if I want to move that to another layer, I can just drag that up to the layer above. Okay, and now I can lock that layer. Now when we're playing around with our sun, that little shadowed section there is not going to get in the way, and it's fixed in place so that when I'm playing around with the things behind here, it's not going to muddy what we're doing.
It's a good trick, that one. I have seen it occasionally, but I think it's definitely something that people are not aware of.
Yeah, it's not always apparent, that one, is it? Okay, so we've got our black section in the background still. That's good. We've got a sun where it needs to be inside its clipping mask. Now let's do these rays that we can see around the outside. So what I'm going to do is use a bit of radial repeat here. But we're going to start by drawing one of the rays. So I'm going to get the polygon tool. I'm going to click once on the screen. And in the number of sides, I'm just going to press 3. Okay, and that's going to make me a triangle. I'm going to make that white. I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. With my magic keyboard, macro keyboard, I'm going to press my vertical and center align button, and it's going to go to the middle of the
I love that. I love that.
All right. Do you like the sound effects as well? I'm proud of that.
Yeah, it helps.
Okay. Right. So I'm just going to bring this up to the top. I'm going to drag the triangle just to kind of make it into more of like a longer, thinner sort of triangle shape. And now I'm going to start to rotate this around the design. So we're going to go back to our object, repeat, radial. And again, put it in a weird place, but we're just going to center that again to the design. Double click on that. I'm going to drag one of those instances up to where it needs to be. And now that, excuse me, that sort of sun's ray is in the right sort of place relative to the sun inside the design. So we're going to drag the number of instances up till we get to a good place where it's starting to look more and more like sun's rays. I'm going to try and keep it so that there's always one bang in the middle of the design rather than an odd number where you've got like a sort of a black gap in the middle. We want the white to be in the middle there. So we've got 50
That's
instances.
interesting that you did the negative space there for this.
Yeah. So it creates like a sort of halo around the sun, which I thought was quite nice and adds a bit of sort of gradient to it. We could swap that out pretty easily if we wanted to, but I'm just going to leave it there for the minute, and then we'll toy around with this in a minute. Now, another really handy function with the radial repeat tool, you see we've got this horrible ray going all the way around the circle now. We don't want that, but so you can set the start and the end points of the radial repeat with that, with these two little cursors here. So I don't want it on the bottom of the design. So
there we go. That's something I didn't know. Ladies and gentlemen, that is cool. I didn't know you could do that.
Tip number one of the day.
I would have been throwing clipping masks around like they were going on sale.
I will do a clipping mask, but it's always handy just to keep that there, just so it's not in the way going forward. So let's do another clipping mask. We're going to cut what we've just done with Apple X. I wonder if we can put it in the same clipping mask we made for the sun. That would be lovely, wouldn't it? It'd just make things a lot easier. Look at that. We can. So what I did there was just double clicked onto the original clipping mask, and when we're inside it, the whole thing's sort of gone grey. I just pasted in place our little sun's rays that we just made. Cool. So that's looking all right. So I think I might just tweak this slightly to get a little bit more focus on this. I'm just going to thin them out a little bit. See how I'm making change to one? It makes changes to all. Very, very handy. And I think I might just increase the number of instances of this so we get a little bit more detail on those rays. There we go. Make sure that last one's visible because now we've got more instances. Cool. Okay. Looking pretty nice. Maybe that was a bit too much. I think I might just bring down the size of the sun slightly. And then, we should try and be as reductive as possible, which is a good, rule for any logo design. I'm going to just make sure that this is getting a little bit closer to the sun. What do we think to that? Happy to take in feedback from the comments, by the way, if anybody has suggestions about how to make this look any better. So one thing I'm noticing.
Let us know in chat what you think. I think it's good that way. I think with the sun kind of minimized a little bit more, you get more of that burst.
Yeah,
that's my 2 cents.
I'm going to send this back a bit further because what's happening is we're getting a difference in the shadow. So you see the shadow that's supposed to fall from this piece of wood is not matching up to where our shadow is on the top section of the design. So we want it to kind of be as uniform as possible. So I'm going to send that back all the way and then just bring it forward until it gets in front of everything that we press it a few times to bring it forward. That's annoying. Okay, so what we may have to do, I think I might fix that at the end. That's an end tidy up problem. So, but what do you see what I mean? That this shadow behind here is the wrong size relative to the one above. But the thing is, it's so far back on all of our layers, it's going to be a bit of an issue. Now, I could just bring that to the front and use it to cover the design. Do you know what I could do is bring it inside the clipping mask that we just made here. There we go, that fixed it. So all I did there was just bring that shadow inside to the clipping mask where we put the sun's rays, and now it's all uniform all the way around.
Oh, nice.
That's good. Okay,
I love that,
so,
like seeing something and thinking, okay, what's like it? How do I fix this
something's
little?
not quite right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those problems that you think you might want to fix at the end, but knowing me, I'll always forget to do it, and I'll export all the files, and then I'll come back and spot the mistake and have to do it later on. Okay, let's bring in some birds. Okay, so in our design, we've got some sort of birds floating above the skyline there, just to give the impression that this is, our sort of sea line. So I'm going to draw some very, very simple bird shapes in the background. Now, we could just do this with the brush tool and do something like that, but we're better than that, aren't we? We can do something a little bit nicer than that. I mean, it is quite a small detail, but I think it will make all the difference if we just try a little bit harder here. So I'm going to draw an ellipse, just bring the stroke weight of that down, maybe even further. And I'm going to duplicate that ellipse over across here like this, and I'm going to just add a little path point roughly sort of 2/3 of the way along between that little arch there. Then I'm going to delete the rest of these paths.
I always love this about Illustrator. It's like kind of designing a little bit like visually, mathematically.
Yeah,
you have to kind of
try and be as mathematical as possible. Just makes you feel better about yourself.
Like building with basic shapes to make something is kind of better than like using the pen tool willy-nilly.
Yeah. Right now on my lovely macro keyboard here, I've got this wonderful button which is set up with an action, which is reflect and copy. So I just press that once, and I've got
beautiful
copy of it. If you don't know how to do that, object, is it transform, and reflect. I've got a keyboard shortcut set up for that as well, and inside there's a copy function. All right, let's drag that over, and I'm going to add our uniform profile that we did on Tuesday next to the stroke width, and just change that to width profile 1. Bring the stroke rate down. It's a bit thick, isn't it? Okay, let's expand these shapes again. I've got a button for that. Boop. If you don't know how to do that, object expand, and I'm going to add a stroke to the outside of the one on the right with a white stroke on the outside of the design. Bump that up a bit, bring it to the front. It's going to separate that from the left wing. Now I want to expand this so that we've got filled strokes and fills. Select them both, and we're going to get out our magical friend, the shape builder tool, which is Shift and M, and we're going to cut away this bit with Option selected, that bit there, and there. And
cool. I like that.
That one there. So it's a nice little reductive bird in the background there. So on sort of small designs, on a small scale, it's a bit hard to see, so I'm just going to bump that up just a little bit.
Nice. Cool. I love that. I love how you built that little bird. Hey, we have a question from chat, and if anyone else has questions, throw them in chat as we're going along. Alessandra asks, James, is there a tool in Illustrator that you were hesitant to use, but then you were surprised at how helpful it became?
Oh, that's a good question. Hesitant to use. A shape builder tool would be it. When I first learned about the shape builder tool, and I saw the tutorials for it, and I was like, what would you use that for? Like drawing sort of squiggly lines to remove parts of shapes. And so I saw it like years ago. And then only recently, in the grand scheme of things, maybe like a year ago, I watched someone doing a design where they basically only used the shape builder tool to put a logo design together. I was like, wow, that is really powerful. So, before, whereas I was using the Pathfinder and, just using combinations of unite or minus front or intersect or exclude to try and build out those shapes. I was finding that with the shape builder tool, that was so much quicker. So yeah, get to grips with that if you can. All right, so what's happening here is I'm making changes to this design, zooming out and zooming back in so I can grab stuff, moving them around, zooming out again to see how it looks on the whole. Now, if you follow me on any of my socials, you'll have seen this tip before, but it is so handy. Okay, so I'm just going to I'm going to close my old example artwork there. We don't need that. Save my design. I'm just going to drag my tab out into a window here. So it just becomes a window on sort of floating within the software. I'm going to go to Window, New Window, which is going to create a copy of that design in another window. And I'm going to drag it to the right. Okay. In this window, I'm going to frame my design so I can see it as a whole. And also, I'm going to go in this window. I'm going to press Command H, and that's going to hide the sort of the outlines of anything that I'm selecting. In the left-hand window, I can now zoom in, make changes. Now, when I move these birds, watch the right-hand screen. They change. Cool. So when I'm making changes to anything up close and things, that affect the design, as a whole, I can do it in the left-hand screen and get really detailed, really close up when I'm making these movements. But on the right-hand side, the preview pane is staying the same. So it gives me a good overarching view of where the spacing of where these birds are relative to the sun, but allows me to select them easily at the same time and see them. So
that's a great tip.
It's a good one, isn't it?
It's really cool.
I think you can also do that with the navigator panel as well, but I find it's really handy to do that. Sometimes it just saves getting in the way.
Saves that zoom in and zoom out, so you could keep the whole composition on the outside. That's a great tip for
you do have to have a big monitor for that to work,
right?
You need a bit of screen real estate to play with in order for that to work. But I think it's pretty, it's worth knowing. Okay, I think we're pretty much there with our wheel design. We've got the sort of concept down. The sun is floating over the horizon. I might bring the shadow down just a touch so we can see a little bit more of our sun, so that separation isn't as massive. We could probably keep it a similar width to the sort of outside edge here, so I can bring it down a bit more. Trouble is with that, we've now peeked behind our sort of white section again, so I'm just going to quickly erase that with the eraser tool. Shift and E, won't take me long. This is faster than trying to hide it with a clipping mask or something silly like that. So I'm going to go really quickly here. Get rid of this.
Very cool. Yeah, Alessandra says that's a good technique, the window one. Yeah, it's very cool. Jana asks, what's the difference between the shape builder and the Pathfinder tool?
They're almost the same. So with the shape builder tool, you use the squiggly line on screen to unite shapes together. So that's the same as using the unite tool. And then you use the command key option to remove. So that's basically removing stuff. I could do you a quick demo if you really want. Let's say you have a shape, 2 circles, and you put one over the top of another one. Let's just invert them. Okay, so with the Pathfinder tools, if I was to select both of these and press Unite, those are now joined together. The same thing in the shape builder tool, Shift and M, is just to draw a line between those shapes. And if you were to use exclude on the Pathfinder tools, it will create a hole in the middle of those 2 designs. Now you can do exactly the same thing with pressing Option and then clicking into that space or drawing a line in that space. Now the reason you might use the shape builder tool over the Pathfinder tool is because you can only really use the Pathfinder with 2 objects before it starts getting really complicated. with the shape builder tool, I could select something like this design, expand everything, and then cut really small portions away from the design itself. So for instance, I could come in here and chop this portion away, or chop that little section there or that little section, and really quickly play around with that. And it's really handy when you've got lots and lots of things going on to make really, really quick edits. So get to grips with the shape builder tool if you can, because it's super powerful.
Awesome. Sneaky little demo in there. I love that. Hi, Sonia.
Always time to help out with a little shape builder tutorial.
I love it. Sonia, following from TikTok. That's awesome. So
nice.
Welcome, Sonia.
Hey, Sonia. How's it going? Okay, right. I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. Now we need to add some type to our design. Okay, so in our sketch, we're going to bring our different sketch over now, which is the one which is a little bit more zoomed out, and we're going to bring some type around the bad shape that we've created here. So bring me that horizon. I've already got it typed out here, so I'm actually just going to copy that. Now I'd love to take suggestions on fonts here, because I am going to fall back to Futura, like I mentioned on Tuesday. I'm going to draw an ellipse on the screen. I'm just going to invert it so we can see where it is, and then I'm going to center that ellipse to the artboard. I'm going to bring up my type on a path tool just by holding down on the T and going down to type on a path. Click on the path itself. I'm going to paste my text in, and I'm going to make it white so that we can see it. Okay. Now we can play around with how this type is designed. I thought about doing the first section, just bring me, excuse me, at the top, and then that horizon on the bottom. But it seems to work better in that orientation. Bring me that across the top, and then horizon on the bottom. So with T selected, I'm just going to actually just type that back in. Okay, so it's upside down. So I'm going to rotate this round. Now, the keen-eyed among you will notice that that's not centered on this path. And this is a very annoying feature of the type on a path tool, is that these little handles are really hard to spot. And for some reason, I can never remember how to grab them. Now, it's either the direct selection tool or you can actually click on the type. I think it's direct selection here. Nope, I've lost them. They're hiding from me again. I'm just going to undo everything and bring them back because they're so elusive. They're under there somewhere. There they are. I hate this. You see that? You see, this is what I'm looking for. These two little handles is the start and the end points of the type. They're so hard to find sometimes. I just don't know what I'm doing wrong when it comes to actually finding that. So let's just change our type back to white so we can see it. Paste in bring me that horizon.
It was like Lord of the Rings ring going around there outside for a second there.
Bring me that. Yeah, some sort of elvish going around the design. Okay. And do you know what I'm going to do? I am going to align that type to the center. The minute it's on the baseline, so it's sitting outside of the design. The trouble is with that is when I copy this, paste it over the front, and bring it onto the bottom. We type in horizon, and then we double click on our type on a path tool to bring up our options. We flip it, press preview. It's sitting also on the baseline, which is now wrong for the top part of the design, right? So we need to actually sit that align to path on the center, and we need to do the same on.
I feel like type always fits more legibly and evenly on the center of this. Anyway,
The spacing is always a bit more correct as well. It seems.
Exactly.
In terms of actually aligning the type. So we can do a few things now with our character panel just to kind of space this type out a bit better. We could either increase the font size to bring it, nice and tight to itself, but it gets quite big quite quickly. So we can, instead of that, we can bring the tracking out and try and do it that way. And also, what I like to do is select optical tracking on Illustrator, because it does a really good job of kerning those letters around that that circle, rather than me having to do it manually for each one. I'm terrible at kerning. I mean, I shouldn't admit that as a logo designer, but yeah, it's just does a very, very quick job for you and gets the design in a really good place, so you can do very simple tweaks towards the end.
That's great. And like, yeah, the optical, I don't know how long that's been in Illustrator. I definitely knew it was there, but like
I learned it in InDesign. I think I got taught it in InDesign when I used to do magazine pages, and it does such a great job of optically spacing the letters. It does something clever with the surface area of a letter and works out how much spacing it should be. It's a really great starting point, though. It's always better than the actual original font. So yeah, definitely give it a go. All right, let's bring everything down now. I'm just going to make sure that we've got our scale, strokes, and effects selected on our properties panel, so that when I scale this down, the strokes are going to scale with the design.
Is that something you often have on? Like you would have on for something like this?
I find it really annoying having to switch it on and off. You used to have to go to Preferences, General, Scale, Strokes, and Effects inside here to turn it on and off. And they recently just added it to the Properties panel, so you can get a hold of it pretty quickly. And I even tried to set one of these keyboards shortcuts up to do that, to toggle it on and off, but you can't do it. It's not something that's programmable.
Yeah, some things can't be mapped.
Yeah. So you can set it as an action, I think, but then you have to set a separate action to turn it off, which isn't good. So you can't toggle it on one button. You have to have an on and off button for
buttons.
it.
Yeah. Is that a feature request? Am I meant to
throw that out
that onto someone?
If anyone from the product team at Adobe's watching, we need that desperately. Okay, so we're almost there. We just need to fill these gaps here with something. And in my sketch, I did a little anchor. So we're going to try and freehand a little anchor design here. So we could do this in so many different ways, obviously, but this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to draw an ellipse. I'm going to press Shift and X to turn that ellipse into a outline stroke. And I'm just going to bring the stroke weight of that up to 30 point or so. I am going to delete the top part of that. So we've got a little curved portion. I'm going to draw a line from the bottom part of this up to the top. I'm going to copy that line and then press Apple F to paste over the top. I'm going to rotate that one 90 degrees, slide it up, press E for the transform handle, and press Option on the edge to bring... right. See, right there, Scale, Strokes, and Effects is turned on. So when I shrink it from the sides, it's shrinking the stroke weight. So now I've got to turn it back off again.
Audible sigh. Yeah. I heard that.
Mute my microphone for that one.
I heard that outside, all the way from Queensland.
Yeah, it wasn't white noise. That was me. Okay, all right, and then one more ellipse on the top of the design to draw our little, the hook for where the rope goes on our anchor. There we go. Not a bad little 10-second anchor. We need some.
Gave me a great idea for a stream, which is like a challenge to like draw certain shapes with like the least amount of clicks or something. Absolutely. I think that would be a fun little tournament.
You could make a little sort of Bezier path game with that, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just try out some arrowheads on here. They probably won't work because they're going to be really, really big. Sorry, you can't see what I'm doing. Let's just move this out of the way. So stroke panel. With that bottom arrow selected, I just changed the arrowhead here. I'm going to bring the scale of that arrow down until it gets roughly in place. That was arrowhead 7. I'm going to repeat that on the other side and scale that one down to the same. Let's just link those up so that they scale together. And there we go. We've got a decent looking anchor.
Pretty cool.
Let's just play around with some different arrows here just to see what we get. I wonder if there's a better one. No. That's all right, isn't it? Do you know what would be really good as well? Again, Adobe product team, if you could rotate the positions of those arrows in situ, that would be really handy. But there's a way to do it after the fact. So let's change our arrowhead to match arrowhead 1. Okay. I am going to... I don't like... There's not enough curve on this, so it's pointing too far up rather than out. So I need to shorten the path point of that just a little bit. May as well do it intersecting with that point there. Just going to delete that path point there and that one there. And also, you see how the arrowhead is aligning inside the stroke? We can just align that to extend beyond the tip, and it just goes a bit further. That's looking a bit better already.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep, and I could just bring the scale of that up slightly. Cool. All right, happy with that?
That's pretty cool.
That was a question. Are you happy with that?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Let me just duplicate this over.
To know if it was rhetorical or not, but
no.
yeah.
Tell me how you really feel. Okay,
Right.
I'm going to expand this. Oops, that didn't work. Why did that not work? Object, expand appearance. There we go. Now I expanded that. It separated the arrowheads from the underlying stroke. I just press Command Y to see what I was doing there. Now, what I was saying before is I can change the size or orientation of these individual arrowheads by themselves now. So I could always rotate them if I wanted a little bit, just to kind of bring them up from the design or move them out of the way, just to create a kind of visual sort of better representation of that arrowhead. Get that pretty much where I want it. Now I can delete the one on the left, select both of these, press my magic mirror and flip tool, and just bring that over to the right, so that it's, you know, keeping it exactly the same for both left and right. That's cool. I think that's centered to the design. Just checking. All right, cool. All right, looking good. I'm going to keep that as a stroke for now. I'll just copy that and bring that over to our lovely.
So you're not going to expand that if you're happy with that?
I will. I just want to see what it looked like in the design
right.
before. So I could always thin it out now by changing the stroke rate of this if it's a little bit heavy in terms of the details of the overall design. It's actually looking quite nice. Now I can't get hold of it because I've got it on. I'm trying to select the type on the path. There it is. So if I just group that now, so now I can just click on the left to latch onto it. So if I ungroup this now and I deselect the arrowheads, this is still a stroke. So if I do think that this is still a bit heavy, I can bring the stroke rate down a bit, just to thin it out a bit. That's looking a bit better. What I'd recommend here is trying to match up the parts of the design with other parts. So see how the stem of the eye has got a certain thickness to it. I might try and do the same on the anchor. So I could be a bit clever here and just draw something along the eye there. Just make that pink and try and get that as close as I can. So it's around 34 pixels. So now I can just change the weight of this anchor and the thing to 34. It'll match up with the eye.
Yeah.
The circle itself we can align that stroke to the outside as well, just so that we get a bit more of a hole in the middle of the thing. It's a bit much. Sod my rule. I'm going back to how it looks nice visually. I think that looks much better.
That's really interesting, that process that you went down. Like, it's because technically it's correct to try to match the strokes. Like, it's almost like having an H1, H2, H3 in Adobe.
Yeah,
like you kind of want to have what's your thin stroke, what's your thinnest stroke, what's your thickest stroke, and what's like a really bold stroke, and then think about that as you're constructing. But then sometimes you kind of have to break the rules.
Yeah, totally. Like right there, that was immediately too thick for the design, wasn't it? It's probably because of the size of the anchor. It's not doing itself any favors. All right, I'm going to duplicate that before I expand it, just in case we want to change it later. But now I'm going to select everything and just expand that with my magic button. And I've also got a unite button, so I'm just going to unite all of that as well. So that's now one solid shape. Duplicate that over. And then if I just select them both, group them together, and center them vertically, just to make sure that they're true to the design. And we are there.
That's awesome.
Cool. I'm just looking now. I think the birds are a bit too far up, so close that down a little bit. Okay, let's get everything else off screen so that we can look at our design in all its glory. And see if we're happy with it before we move on to the next phase.
It's very cool. What do you think, folks? Let us know in chat.
So yeah, so that's pretty much it. So we could try out some different fonts, but I'm happy with this in terms of sort of moving forward, and we can now start to bring this into maybe something like a Photoshop mockup. So if I was going to present this to a client, they obviously need to see this in the real world, right? So we could always put it on a t-shirt, or we could put it on something like a beer mat, which would be fun.
How important are mockups, do you think, in terms of like client presentations?
Massively important, hugely important, because otherwise you're just sending them a JPEG of a black and white logo, and they're supposed to visualize that logo, as being part of their, their brand. It's impossible for them to see it, to visualize it in things like business cards and signage and stationery and all those other places. And it's my job to bring it to life. It also makes the sign-off process way quicker because they're not, they can also see how much work you've put into a design. So, actually putting the work in and creating pages and pages of mockups kind of allows them to not be as offhand with their brutal feedback. You know what I mean? They've got to think about it a little bit more. If they think you've spent no time at all on it, they're going to be quick with their feedback and they're going to be a bit more ruthless. Whereas, they'll actually be a bit more measured if you've shown that you are thinking about where this logo is going to go in their business and where it's going to actually be, be printed and be used in the real world.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's take our design, and I'm just going to duplicate everything that we've done. Unlock our background layer. I'm going to copy everything on this layer. I'm going to go to a new artboard and paste that in place. I'm just going to center that. Oops, press the wrong button. Press my flip button.
Flipped it.
Flip the script. Okay, undo that. So everything is now on one layer, which isn't ideal. We want our background layer behind again. I'm going to drag our artwork up to this layer here. Now, I've got a magic button on my macro keyboard, which is going to do this next step forward, but I feel like I should talk through what
auto mock-up.
Well, I wish. At the minute, this design is a hodgepodge of strokes and fills. It's real type. If I was to send this to a printer and they scaled it up, it would scale up all the strokes, or there'd be all sorts of issues. They might not have the right font. We need to get this as like a flat white vector that we can just send as an EPS or an SVG or a PNG to a printer. Because if I was to export this at the minute and send it off, it would look awful. There's bits of black in there covering the design. There's also stuff behind the design that isn't in the right place. It's a mess. Okay. Now I could go through all of these and outline everything. So I could do things like select the type and press Shift Command O to outline that type. That's probably a good step just for us to do straight away. The thing is, that takes forever. I'd have to cut these portions away from the design. I would have to remove the black from the white behind it. And, you probably use the shape builder tool to do that, but it's just a huge ordeal. So instead, what I can do is I can select everything, go to Object, Rasterize. I'm going to create this as high as possible. The default values, I think, are pretty good. 300 ppi. I'm going to make the background transparent now. I think that's right. There we go. Now, that has turned our design into basically like a JPEG of our logo, right? At the minute, if I was to take that off, it's still got our, black backgrounds behind it, which is no good. So I need to image trace this back to a vector. So there's a little button for that up here, image trace. Give that a second to work. We're going to bring up our image trace panel here and change the options so that we get our design back. At the minute, that went to black and white, which is not good. So we're going to bring our design back. I think we do this by color. If we were working the other way around, this would be a lot faster because it would just make everything black. But because we worked inverse, we're just going to... There we go. Expand this out. Now I'm going to go into an issue here, aren't we? We need... Is it silhouettes? No.
Wasn't that?
Oh, bugger. I hope we don't have to do this the hard way. Let's go back. Go to, the thing is, black and white logo is not what we want because this got rasterized, didn't it? Let's just turn the image trace off. Go back to default. Grayscale. Sorry, I'm playing around a little bit here because I'm doing this in verse. It's not working the way I would have expected. Give this a second.
So what's going on, everyone? How are you, chat?
Yeah, let's chat amongst yourselves while I sort this out.
Well, it's out. This is part of it, though, isn't it? Like playing around, trying. This is like trying different adjustment layers to see how things work, and like playing with the scales and trying to see,
the thing is,
what works.
Well, the thing is with image trace is that it takes so long between the things. So as I'm trying stuff out, it takes like 30 seconds to render what I've just done, which is not ideal on a live stream. But yeah, essentially, I want to turn this into a. Let's bring this over. Do you know what I did? Do you know what I've done wrong? Let's just do this again. If I go back and undo, no. I'm going to take this back, and I'm going to. It's because I set the background to be transparent, I think, which actually we don't want. We want the background to be black. So I'm going to draw a black circle behind the design. Okay, center that on screen. Send it to the back. Oh, hang on, it's on the wrong layer. 1 second. There we go. Now, if I select this and just turn the background layer off for a minute and then rasterize this.
Rasterize this. That's what it should say. It shouldn't say rasterize. It should rasterize this.
Background whites, yes. Okay.
So I think we did background transparent last time.
Yes, we did, which removed the black, which we actually need from the design. So now, fingers crossed, when I image trace this, tracing result, all good. Now we can actually, no, we don't want to ignore white. I'm just going to turn off snap curves to lines. It's very annoying that defaults to this because you usually want, when you've got a design with as much circular elements as we do, we want the curves to be as organic as possible. We don't want that image trace to snap those to lines. So I'm just going to turn that off. And looking at the preview, that's done a pretty bloody good job of tracing our image. I'm just zooming right in, getting a little bit of artifacting on the corners here, but nothing that's worrying me. Little of one there. Now we can fix that later on, but I don't think I'm gonna have time to quite do that on the stream. And now I'm just gonna
we've got about 7 minutes left. 8
7
minutes left.
All right, cool. Cool. So now that is vectored back into black, which is cool. I'm just going to delete the outside bounding box there, which always gets in the way. And I just want to check something. I just want to make sure that this is actually white. It is. Okay, so that means... Okay. Not to worry. Let's take our vector file that we've got there. We're going to go into Photoshop and let's put this on a beer mat. Okay, so this is how you create a quick mock-up in Photoshop, right? So our beer mat is circular. We're going to draw an ellipse on the screen. And amazingly, my macro keyboard works for Photoshop as well. So if I center this, it centers to the design.
Cool.
Did a bit of hard work to sort that out, but yeah, it's actually fixed. So we're going to turn this ellipse into a smart object by right-clicking on it and converting it to a smart object. We're going to rename that, put your logo here, like you see on those Photoshop templates. And now I can resize this and try and match it up to where the sort of beer mat would go. So I can use... if I hold down Command on the corner points here, I can sort of try and get this as close as I can to where the outside of the beer mat is. I'm not going to get too accurate here, but because I'm going to run out of time. But this is, you'd spend a bit longer doing this. I'm going to stretch this as close as possible. And then if I double click into my smart object here, which brings up the original smart object, if I turn that, I'll just try and get these both on screen for you here. Keep this one in the background so you can see it. If I switch off the layer in here, press save, it'll automatically update that. Now I can paste in my design, bring me that horizon, shrink it down a little bit, press save, and there it is. Horrible skewing going on because I was a bit haphazard with the transform tool. But now I can go back in here and be a bit gentler with this and put it in the right place and try and get it roughly where it needs to be. Got my perspective.
Did you save it? Did you save it in that other window?
Yeah. To bring that into this design, do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, absolutely.
Okay.
There we go. My perspective sorted out. And then
do you generally make your own mock-ups, or do you?
It depends on the client.
Yeah.
What's really handy is if you do a mock-up for a client that is like their external signage on for a factory, and there's no mock-up for that. Do you know what I mean? Like trying to show the design on someone's building. It's really handy to be able to actually do that for the client and actually show them how their design is going to look.
So if you have access to it, you go down and take a photo of their.
I did that for a client in Australia, and they sent me some photos of their shop signage and the internal of their building. They sent me a load of pictures of their the external new building, which I just mocked the logo up onto, and it totally sold it in. Oh, nice. Cool. So we can also do this on a T-shirt. Let's just do. Have we got enough time to do one more?
Yeah, we got about 4 minutes left.
All right, I'll go
getting
really
specific.
Yeah. If I just up the curbs on this T-shirt just to try and to show that background of that T-shirt, and I want to make this black and white as well. Where's my black and white filter? There it is. Okay, I'm going to save this as a new PSD, black T-shirt model. I'm going to call this one Displace. I'm sure you guys have seen this before, but it's really handy. I'm going to reopen up our original Photoshop file. We're going to paste our design over the top. Now we just want this in white, so we can use a blend mode to remove the black from this. I think it's lighter color. It's always good. Get this roughly in place. And if we go now to filter, distort, displace, it'll bring up a window, and we're going to make sure that just leave these as default. They're pretty good. We're going to make sure this wraparound is selected. I'm going to press OK. It's going to bring up a window. I'm going to select our displace PSD, press enter, and add just a little wavy effect to the design, and kind of just maps it a little bit better. And then we can play around with opacities and other blend modes of the one in front, with maybe an overlay in order to try and it's still got a bit of black in there to sort of make that look more realistic.
I'm always shocked when it's not multiply, when it's an adjustment layer.
Yeah, well, because we've got black in our design. I'm not sure that worked. That worked, didn't it? Multiply. No, we've got black in our design. Doesn't work. You have to use the opposite one, which is screen or lighten. Cool.
Makes sense. That's great. Look at that. Perfect timing. Hey, it's time to wrap up. Thank you, James. That was awesome. I love the bonus, Photoshop mockups at the end there as well. Super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And bonus problems with Adobe Image Trace as well. That was brilliant.
That's it. But resolved. And I mean, that's part of it, right? That's what a lot of us will spend a lot of time trying to solve a problem by ourselves. So it's always great to see even very experienced people, things pop up. It's like, why is it behaving this way today? I don't know what this is. So there's one quick question we've got. Any advice for someone who is just starting out using Adobe Illustrator?
Oh, or get on Behance.live and watch loads of tutorial videos of everybody else working in Adobe Illustrator. No, seriously, getting experience by watching other people work. That is the way to learn. Because you'll find out about software tips and tricks that you didn't know about before. And the only way to really find that without, reading the manual is to watch other people at work. So watch other designers do their stuff. That's the best way to learn in Illustrator.
There you go. Perfect. Great advice on the way out. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll be back for our last week of Adobe Live for the year here in Asia Pacific. Thanks, James. It's been fantastic hanging out with you, and look forward to having you back sometime in the future.
Cheers, Flynn. Appreciate it. Take it easy and enjoy the holidays.
Thank you. See you, everyone.
Cheers, guys.